Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial, and today we've got a video based on one of the questions that you guys have asked pretty frequently: which battleship had the fastest rate of fire for its main battery guns? Extremely simple question, kind of a simple answer, maybe a little bit complicated how we get there. Battleship gun calibers during World War II range everywhere from 11 inches to 18.1 inches. Now, obviously, it's going to be easier to move an 11-inch shell because of its weight and the powder associated with it, because that's also going to be lighter, than it is to move an 18.1-inch shell. However, we're going to go through and look at the times of all of the World War II battleships, and to keep this from being a look at all of the battleships ever built, we're specifically looking at World War II battleships, and we're specifically looking at dreadnoughts and beyond. There were a couple of pre-dreadnought type battleships in service during World War II. The German Schleswig-Holstein pretty famously fires the first shots of the war. The Greek Kilkis and Lemnos pretty famously do nothing during the war except get sunk by Stukas, but they are present combatants, and we're not going to look at them because they are so far obsolete by this time that their rate of fire doesn't really, it falls outside of the averages that we're seeing. Now, some of the other issues we're going to see when we look at rate of fires is that some of the documentation we're able to find this is the actual achieved rate of fire, which is complicated because in combat it's almost never as good as what it is rated at. And some of it is what it's rated at, and some of it is we don't have any of the documentation that says what was achieved or what the manufacturers of the guns said they were able to achieve, and so it's sort of just averaged in there somewhere in the middle. And then, of course, some guns have in theory, they could do this. This part of the firing cycle does this. The shell hoist can load 100 shells a minute, but the powder hoist can only load 1 powder charge per minute. So the rate of fire is much lower. So we're going to go through some of that, where that information is available. And again, the amount of information we have very much differs from ship to ship, even though we're only looking at the World War II battleships, which are probably the most popular, the most well documented. So you're going to see some variance in these numbers where maybe there shouldn't be any, just because some of them are estimates and some of them are actuals and some of them are planned rates of fire. There's no list out there that's just here's all these guns and what their rates of fire are. What we do have is after action reports for some ships. Now, being in the United States, we have a lot of after-action reports for American ships, and those are very easy to find, especially on websites like the National Archives. So you go and you find a battle which had a lot of battleship participation, and you look for shell expenditures and rates of fire and things like that, reports for those specific dates. So, for example, the battle that had the most battleships during World War II and the one that had the most American battleships present in the most variants of classes was the Battle of Okinawa, which the invasion starts on April 1st, 1945. The actual bombardment starts a few days earlier. So you start looking for records at the end of March, going up through the middle of April. This is a 90-day campaign. I think it's 86 days. It takes 3 months to secure the island. And during this time, no less than 18 Allied battleships are in the area providing naval gunfire support or providing anti-aircraft support to the carriers and other forces nearby. Everything from older battleships like New York and Texas up to the latest and greatest Iowa-class battleships such as USS New Jersey, which is present there providing naval gunfire support. So since I've been doing a lot of research on this battle, I started looking for documentaries on it that I could put on in the background while I did other work. And one of the documentaries I found is called Battle of Okinawa, Operation Iceberg. And this is available on Magellan TV. Magellan TV partnered with Battleship New Jersey for today's video. They have a growing selection of documentaries available with over 4,000 currently online. I've been worried about what I'm going to get people for the holidays this year because my mom already told me I can't buy everyone stuff from the Battleship's gift shop anymore. But luckily, Magellan TV is offering discounts so I can just get subscriptions to this to my family for the holidays. My viewers get a 7-day free trial by clicking the link in the description. If you get a 6-month subscription, it's 17% off, only $25. A full year subscription is 30% off, only $42. That's less than $1 a week. And they're offering lifetime subscriptions for $135. That's 86% off their normal rate. Click the link in the description to watch the documentary and enjoy a special holiday offer on Magellan TV. Whether it's a free trial or an incredible deal on gift cards, this season Magellan TV has something for everyone. So now let's start looking at some of the rates of fires of ships. We're going to start with the larger caliber guns and then work our way down. And in general, that is going to mean that the rates of fire get faster, although the age of the gun and the technological complexity of it may impact that some. So, first off, we have the 18-inch category. Yamato is the only World War II era battleship that had 18-inch guns. And the information on Japanese ships is interesting because they give both the fastest possible rate of fire, which is at the loading angle, usually about 3 degrees on a Japanese ship. Remember, it's 5 degrees on American fast battleships. But at that angle, if she's just firing repeatedly at 3 degrees at really close range, she can get a rate of fire of 1 round every 30 seconds. And that's comparable to the American 16-inch gun, which is incredible because the American 16-inch guns have a certain amount of manual operation in moving powder bags and shells around, and the Japanese turrets are much more mechanized in that. If Yamato is firing at her maximum elevation and the gun has to depress and load and then elevate again, the rate of fire is closer to 1 round every 41 seconds, which is still extremely competitive on this list. Yamato has a really effective gun, even though it's throwing the largest shell with the largest powder on this list. Her rate of fire time is right in the middle with everybody else, with most of the American guns and with many other guns out there. But to compare it more directly to other 18-inch guns, during the interwar period, the US Navy tested a single 18-inch gun, and they were estimating that the rate of fire for that gun would be about 1 round every 45 seconds. So a little bit longer than the 18-inch guns on Yamato. Likewise, there was another Navy that put 18-inch guns to sea. The British were able to put single-mount 18-inch turrets on some of their monitors, and the large light cruiser / battle cruiser Furious. And those guns on Furious had a rate of fire of about 1 round per minute. It was a little bit worse on the more cramped monitors. So that's given you an idea of the World War I version of that gun, and Yamato is able to half that time with about 30 years more modern technology. So interesting to see there that other countries' 18-inch guns would be at the extreme upper end of the reload cycle, but Yamato is right in the middle with the majority of the pack here. So going down to the 16-inch guns, this is where the Iowa class are. And the United States has all of their fast battleships having the same firing cycle. So the North Carolinas, the South Dakotas, and the Iowas, they have them all doing the same speed, and that's theoretical rate of fire of 1 round every 30 seconds, 2 rounds per minute. Now, it was interesting because I looked at the firing cycle clock image that's out there. to see how much time is given for the gun to depress and then elevate again, to see if that is impacting that rate of fire. Because again, the Japanese are really taking that into account. No other nations seem to be. So it's like, okay, well, how much time is the US Navy allotting to this, if any at all? And the firing cycle shows 2.5 seconds for the gun to come back down. Like, is that just an average? What's the deal with that? The guns on American fast battleships can elevate or depress at 12 degrees per second. They have to get to the 5-degree loading angle, which means that in 2.5 seconds it can elevate from 5 degrees, 30 degrees to 35 degrees. Their maximum elevation is 45 degrees, so it's a little bit more than average. So at lower degrees, their rate of fire could theoretically be like a second or two slower. And at maximum elevation, their rate of fire is like 1 second longer than that. So really negligible. The US sort of just like blanket 30 seconds for everybody, 30 seconds. And I think that, more than anything, shows how aspirational this is as opposed to something that's sustainable. Because you're not going to be firing one round every 30 seconds repeatedly, like in a video game where it's the same every single time. So, American fast battleships are kind of in the middle of the pack in the 16-inch gun range, being right around the same speed as the Japanese 18-inch guns. Who else is nearby? On the faster side of things, you've got Nagato, which in theory has the fastest firing 16-inch guns at 21.5 seconds if they are at the 3-degree loading angle. Obviously, if they've got to elevate and depress, that time goes up. So their average speed is closer to 30 like everyone else. Interestingly, there is a listed speed for the Sovietsky Soyuz class, even though they are unbuilt, and as far as I know, none of their turrets were completed, but they were projecting reloading speeds between 23 and 34 seconds. So that likely means that they calculate out the firing cycle with that elevation and depression stuff. So at their loading degree, and I don't know what the Soviet loading degree would have been, it would have been about 23 seconds, which again, is just the plan. They never made one of these to test it. I have some questions about that. They certainly didn't have the experience designing, building, or operating these that the Americans or the Japanese had. And then 34 degrees if it's got to come all the way down and go all the way back up to maximum elevation. A little bit slower, the Colorado-class battleships were supposed to have a rate of fire of about 1 round every 45 seconds, or 3 rounds every 2 minutes. However, at the Battle of Suragawa Strait, after scoring a hit on her first salvo, West Virginia's gunnery officer puts them into rapid fire mode and just tells the crew to basically maintain where you're firing and fire as quickly as you can. And they were firing salvos every 41 seconds. So they achieved a rate of fire below what their aspirational rate was. Now keep in mind, West Virginia is heavily modernized after she sunk at Pearl Harbor, and Maryland does not achieve a similar rate of fire during this battle. She's the same class, but is not modernized. So 45 seconds is still probably more accurate for that class, although interestingly, West Virginia exceeds that. And it's one of the few times that anyone on this list exceeds their aspirational time. And that brings us to the worst performer on this list, or maybe more accurately, the most accurately reported one on this list. The British with the Nelson and Rodney, the Nelrod class, were reported exactly what they were able to do under various conditions. And so that exceeds their aspirational, which just about everybody on here would exceed their aspirational. And it shows some teething issues they had and some fixes they had to make to it. So the designed loading cycle for these mounts was supposed to be 30 seconds. But in practice, you could load and fire one gun in about 35 seconds. They never got it down to 30 seconds. As the shell loading in the handling rooms required 50 seconds, The maximum sustained rate of fire was run 1 round per gun every 50 seconds. However, because of the necessity of firing wing and center guns in different salvos to reduce dispersion problems, the firing rate was even further reduced to something like 1 round every 60 or 65 seconds. Even with modifications, the Director of Naval Ordnance considered it extremely doubtful that a greater rate of fire than 1 round every 40 seconds for the first 4 rounds, and then 1 round every 45 seconds thereafter could actually be achieved. So again, this is the worst performance in the 16-inch category, but more realistically, it's the most accurately recorded one in this category, and everybody else would have probably been similar to that, unless it's like Nagato at the ideal loading angle. So that brings us up to the 15-inch guns. The 15-inch guns, I think, are the most telling category here because it shows us what you can do to reduce the rate of fire, or to increase it, as the case may be. The loading procedures for these guns is fairly identical from nation to nation during the war. So to get a few seconds slower or a few seconds faster, you either have to make your stuff lighter so you can load it faster, or come up with a better mechanical solution to do it. So the worst performer on this list is the Littorio class with 1 round every 45 seconds. The problem is they're loading 6 bags of powder, but they put 3 on the tray, ram it, put 3 more on the tray, and ram it again. So they're doing this process with 3 strokes. The shell, retract, the first 3 powder bags, retract, and 3 more. So that's why theirs is longer than everybody else's. On the other side of things, you have the Bismarck, which different documentation says that she could attain a rate of a fire of 20 seconds or 26 seconds. 20 seconds comes from how rapidly the shell hoist can cycle. So there is documentation that says they can feed shells every 20 seconds. But that doesn't talk about powder or doing the other steps in the process. So I think that's way too fast. The 26-second number is far more likely. And that's what Krupp's documents say that the guns were designed to do. She's able to achieve a much higher rate of fire than everyone else because half of her powder bags are in bags like these, like normal, but the other half are in brass canisters, and those are easier to handle and easier to load. And so that's something that gives German battleships in general a faster rate of fire. It's reducing how many times you have to ram stuff in and how many precautions you have to take ramming these silk bags without causing friction or other issues. The downside for German ships, however, is that you have to eject these brass casings from the turrets, and the German ships consistently had problems with water coming back into the turrets through those ejection ports. So they theoretically had a faster rate of fire, but it caused more maintenance issues for them. And then here, because we can look at her actual combat record, we get an idea of how effective they actually were. While they can, in theory, have a rate of fire of 1 round every 26 seconds, in actuality, at the Battle of Denmark Strait, before Bismarck has taken any damage, she fires 93 shots over the course of 13 minutes, or approximately 1 half salvo every minute. And she was firing a half salvo, waiting for the shells to get there, and then firing the next salvo. So this is a perfect example of she can fire faster, but you don't know if those shells are going to hit yet. You have to wait for them to hit, and for a target 13, 14, 15 miles away, it's going to take a full minute for the projectile to get there before you can adjust your solution and then fire another salvo. So that's as opposed to a ship like, say, Weevy at Suragawa Strait, where they score a hit on the first salvo and they're just like, we're not recalculating a solution, just go with that, guys. Now, in between Littorio and Bismarck, you have Hood with a 32-second firing cycle, Richelieu, which as completed has a 45-second firing cycle, However, she doesn't get a really good workup period. She's completed during the war, while Germany is actively invading France. So she doesn't get the shakedown cruise to work out those problems. And post-war, Jean Bart is able to get her firing cycle down to 33 seconds. So that's probably a more accurate number for this class. And then you've got the Queen Elizabeth class and the R class, which both are supposed to have a rate of fire of 1 round every 36 seconds. However, at least one of the ships in that class was able to get their rate of fire in 1917 down to 1 round every 30 seconds. But again, that's in training, so slightly more ideal conditions than during combat. For the 14-inch category, these are more approximations or even guesses based on other things because there isn't a whole lot of documentation that's survived. The Japanese 14-inch gun that armed the Kongo, Fuso, and Issei classes, rate of fire of 1 round every 30 seconds. That's just the generic standard thing you say. King George V, 1 round every 30 seconds. The Chilean Admiral Latorre class, 1 round every 30 seconds. The Tennessees and the Mississippis, they recorded their rate of fire of about 1 round every 34 seconds. Although, remember, Idaho does that training exercise where they try to expend 100 rounds per barrel as fast as they can. And they're closer to 1 round per minute during that. They start out obviously with a faster rate of fire, and as they work their way through the ammunition that's near the hoists, it takes longer and longer to get shells and powder where they need to go. For the Nevada, Pennsylvania, and New York classes, their rates of fire are guesstimated based on the recorded rates of fire for the Mississippis and Tennessees. And so Nevada and Pennsylvania are probably about 35 seconds. They're not quite as modern 14-inch guns. And the New York class is probably about 45 seconds because, again, it's an even older model of gun. And now for the last category, the one that's going to have the winning time, we actually chose to mix up because we've got 11-inch guns, we've got 12-inch guns, 12.6-inch guns, 13-inch guns, and 13.4-inch guns. And there's only one class that has 12.6 inch. There's only one class that has 13.4 inch. So there wasn't a lot, one class has 13 inch. There's not a lot to compare them against unless you mix them all up into the same category. So at the slow end here, with one shot every 45 seconds, I have the Brazilian Minas Gerais class. I couldn't find information on her gun turrets, but she has the exact same gun barrels that Mikasa has, and Mikasa is able to fire 3 rounds every 2 minutes or 1 round every 45 seconds. So that's my guess for this. However, shell and powder handling arrangements in the presumably newer model turrets may have gotten this rate of fire down. At the low end for the 12-inch gun is the World War I built French Corbeil class. The 12.6-inch reboard guns of the Giulio and Caesar classes of the Italian Navy were able to get a rate of fire of 1 round every 30 seconds. The 13.4-inch guns on Bretagne have a rate of fire listed as somewhere between 28 and 35 seconds. This seems more like the actual achieved, which is why there's variance there. The Russian 12-inch guns on the Ganget slash, I'm just going to call it October Revolution, that's what those words translate to in English, have a recorded rate of fire of about 33 seconds. But one of the class that's rebuilt during the interwar period did achieve a rate of fire of 1 round every 27 seconds. The 12-inch guns on the Argentinian battleship Rivadavia and the 12-inch guns on the American battleship Wyoming are listed as between 20 and 30 seconds for their rate of fire. I feel like that should be, we should be able to find a better information on that, but that's the best I could find. Likewise, Alaska's 12-inch guns are listed as 20 to 25 seconds. Now, they are interesting in that she has a 2-stage powder hoist, whereas other battleships tend to have a 1-stage powder hoist, and that helps increase her rate of fire, even though her shells are closer to the weight of a 14-inch gun instead of a 12 or 13-inch gun. I suspect the reason why hers are listed as 20 to 25 seconds is because originally there was a power mechanism for moving the 12-inch shells around the shell deck that ends up getting removed because it's not effective. So I suspect it was 25 seconds with the mechanical thing helping, and 20 seconds once they remove that, which makes those ships incredibly deadly with that kind of rate of fire and those sorts of guns. Still not quite on the level of, say, Des Moines, but pretty good. The Turkish battlecruiser Yavuz had a rate of fire of 1 round every 20 seconds nominally, but a self-reported rate of fire of 1 round every 41 seconds. And again, I suspect that's closer to what's accurate for just about everyone on this list. They're just one of the few that we have actual self-reported data on. But the fastest firing battleship guns of World War II, drum roll please, actually probably shouldn't hammer on the powder bags, the Scharnhorst class. They have a rate of fire, in theory, of 1 round every 17 seconds. However, they're able to achieve this because they have the smallest caliber battleship gun used during World War II, 11 inches. So they're firing the lightest shells of anyone on this list with the lightest powder charge of anyone on this list. And they're using, again like Bismarck, partial bagged ammo and then partial cased ammo, which helps increase that rate of fire even further, which is why she edges out by just a handful of seconds some of the other ships on this list with similar caliber guns. I do want to, however, give an honorary mention to Yavuz because she's achieving that theoretical 20-second reload time, actuality 41-second reload time, with all manual stuff, passing powder bags and shells manually, whereas Scharnhorst is a much more mechanized system, and that's how she's able to edge out by 3 seconds. So, what do you think? Is rate of fire everything it's cracked up to be? Or do you think some of the ships that are able to fire significantly heavier projectiles slightly slower are actually more effective ships? Let us know in the comments section down below. Do you want the biggest gun possible even if the rate of fire isn't going to be that high, knowing full well that in combat you're never going to achieve that high rate of fire? Or do you think it's worth it to go like Scharnhorst and be able to dump your magazines completely in 5 minutes and then return to port? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State and a number of businesses and private individuals. For today's video, we partnered with Magellan TV. Remember to check the link in the description below for more information on their holiday sale. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.